Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 890. I had the white pieces and started off with knight f3, wanting to play some kind of Reti opening. And my opponent picked the rare move knight c6. Lichess gave this the colorful name, the Black Mustang defense. It's interesting. Maybe the best move here is to avoid the Reti at this point and play a move like d4. Kind of makes sense. This knight f3 move, one of its objects is to stop the e-pawn from coming to e5, and knight c6 obviously defends the e5 square so that e5 is possible, and in fact black played that during the game. So if I get in the move d4 first, which I can do at this point, I can just stop that plan, and this could transpose into a Chigoran defense. This is a Chigoran defense to the Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit declined. And that's an interesting way for black to play bishop g4, and white develops the other knight, and often black will give up the bishop and try and damage the pawns over here. There's interesting lines for black in this opening. Basically, he's going for active play with his pieces, and white has a little more center influence on the bishop pair. So better for white overall, but interesting play for black. So not a bad opening at all. Let's go back to the game. We wandered off pretty early. We can still look at it, the opening book. Anyway, he played knight c6, and I was wanting to get a Reti type of opening in, so I continued with g3. And he goes e5 immediately. So I went d3, stopping e5. He goes stopping e4, and then he goes d5. So he's renewing this threat of the e5. I wasn't too worried about it at this point and just played bishop g2. I thought if he pushed on here, take that back. If he pushed on here, I would take, he would take, and then I could trade queens and then move my knight and attack this pawn. And that should be good for me. The knight also, in addition to attacking the pawn, would be threatening f7 with the fork of the king and the rook. So e5 is not good here. E4 is not good in this position. I managed to stop it for the moment. Played bishop g4, and now h3 is the most common move here, asking this bishop what it wants to do. Although, we're in a very small section of the database, so, who knows what's best here. Anyway, knight bd2 seems okay. Now he goes knight f6, and once again he's renewing this threat of e4, which he actually played in the game. It's getting a little bit hard for me to stop it. Maybe I just need to play maybe I need to play e4 myself. And I guess that's playable at this point. That invites this knight will be pinned. But, I will at least get castled, and that pawn will be solidly defended. Even if he trades, the knight will defend it. And I can castle and bring the rook in to defend it too. And I'll just deal with that pin on the knight later. Because what I played leads to a position which I think is probably pretty good for black. And it's because of what he played in the game. I mean, I was skeptical about this move, e4. I just really did not think it was working during the game. But the chess engine gives black pretty good chances here. He's at least equal. So I take. This is all good. And then go knight g5. And I'm just rounding up that pawn. And really, there's no way for him to defend it. But he can go for counterplay, and he gets a lot of counterplay in the game too. But the chess engine points out this line, say queen d7, and then I take. He takes, and I take with the bishop. I don't want the queen trade here. Then he can castle queenside, and he's got some annoying pressure here. I can't move the knight because I'll just lose the queen. Even if I castle, the queen's not adequately defended. So I need to play a move like queen a4, and I guess I can slowly unravel. But this, like I said, there's a position which is at least equal for black. The chess engine actually prefers black there. Or bishop to f5, as he played, is another position which seems to be at least equal for black. So I went ahead and took here. My knight is in danger of getting trapped or kind of sidelined if it gets kicked back to this square. That would be another option, I guess, just to leave that pawn there. But anyway, in the game, I went ahead and took it. He took, I took, he took, and this is all kind of forced once he Oh, I'm sorry. He took with the knight. I took with the bishop. Yeah, I didn't want to allow the queen trade, but he forces it by taking, and I always have to take back, otherwise I'm just down a piece. So we get to this position pretty much by force, where my king has been displaced, and he gets to castle with a check. So I am a pawn up, and I thought I would be okay, or better, in fact. I thought I would be fine here. But, well, my king position is a bit awkward, and so black has more than enough play. And apparently the move to stay equal is to play king c2. I didn't like this move. I mean, I want to play king c2, but I didn't like it because his knight hops in here with a check, and well, the king goes back to b1. This is the computer line from this point. The computer says I'm still okay because if he takes here, I can go to g4. And this pawn actually can't be defended. Kind of funny. So, and if he pushes it forward, I still can move my knight to f7 and fork his two rooks. So he needs to move a rook, and I can grab a pawn. So I stay a pawn up, but my king is in this awkward position, and this is actually just better for black. Anyway, so that would be, or maybe that's still about even. I guess that's the line that's even. He has compensation, I should say. Instead I went king e1, and this line is actually better for black if he had played it correctly. He needs to give this check, chase my king further away, and now he always has his rook coming down here at the right moment. Actually, the way the chess engine plays it, it goes like this. Rook here hitting my knight. I bring my knight around, and then he trades it off. Yeah, maybe knight c3 wasn't the best move, but this is the engine line. And then he comes in with the checks, and gets another check. Oh no, he gets the pawn, right? And let's see, I can develop a piece. So what happened here? It's down to an endgame where I have a rook and a bishop. He has a rook and a knight. Same number of pawns, but you can see my queen pawns are a mess. And even though the bishop is sometimes better than the knight in these endgames with pawns on both sides of the board, that's more than made up for by the fact that I have these weak pawns on the queen side. So black, this is probably a winning endgame for black. So that was best play. Anyway, let's go back to the game. Let's see, I had just taken his queen. He castled the queen side. I went to e1, which was a mistake. I should have gone to c2. And he played h6, which was also a mistake. He could have thrown in that check immediately. Although you can see he was a little worried about this knight g4 idea. So it does make sense, the move he played. But the other move is more accurate and keeps an advantage. So now we're in the range of about even. And slowly, I start to unravel. And if I unravel successfully, then I'll just be a pawn up. So I started with this a3 move, stopping his bishop from coming out and giving the check. He kicks my knight. I drop back. Played g5 here. And I just wanted to develop my bishop anyway. I wasn't worried about him messing up my pawns over here so much. I wasn't even necessarily going to castle, although I was planning to trade off at least one pair of rooks to make my king position a little easier to manage. Let's see, he went bishop g7, looking at my knight, and I decided to defend it so we didn't get into that isolated doubled c-pawn situation. And now he played knight d4. And here I just traded. Now the chess engine thinks I'm better if I just push on with h4. And I think by this point it's starting to give white a slight advantage. So slowly, somehow, black's activity has faded away, and then I'm just left with just being a pawn up. Anyway, I decided to trade here. I was kind of wanting to get this move e3 in with tempo, give my king some space to move to. He drops his bishop back. I go king e2. And after this move, rook d7, the chess engine now agrees that white really is a pawn up. There may have been a more active move right then, but I'm not sure exactly what it was. These values are only approximate anyway, but white's position has gradually been improving. Let's see, I bring my rook over to oppose his rook, and he doubles. And like I said, I look to trade off one pair of rooks, so it's easier to manage my king position. And then I want to keep the other rook on because I want to still have some play in the position. I want to keep it, complicated enough that I have winning chances here. Although a pawn up, I suppose I could consider going into a a minor piece endgame. Let's see. He went. Oh no, it's my turn. I went rook c2. Want to defend the b pawn so my knight can move. He played c6, so that's a nice move. Takes squares away from my knight. And then let's see. I went f3. I'm just gradually trying to push my kingside pawns forward and realize my extra pawn over here. There's king c7. And now I go e4. I think this move, in retrospect, this move was a bit rash. So if I want to keep my edge, I should probably prepare that move a little bit. I could play moves like king to f2 and rook to e2 and then push that pawn forward. Although I have to do something about that knight too. So it's a little bit tricky to unravel. But that I should take my time and not rush with this e4. Because, well, he finds a nice sequence here. He pins the pawn. I really hadn't seen that coming. I step out of the pin, and now it almost looks like he can win the pawn, but not quite. Well, there is a way, but not the way he played it in the game. So here's what he should play. He can play bishop d4 check, a nice intermediate move, and I move my king to the side. I was planning to go this way. Then he trades. In the game, he just took immediately. I take, and he takes his pawn. I come back and pin it. Also, this happened in the game. He has the move e takes f3 check, so he can unpin with check, and I can take with the king or the rook, but he's managed to win a pawn back, and it's just an even game at this point. So that's how he could have played it. Instead, he took immediately, and we'll see the difference. I take back. He takes the pawn. I pin it. And now when he takes over here, if he were to take there, I just take his rook. There's no check. So that's the difference. The bishop check to chase my king to a light square so that he can play pawn takes pawn with check right in this position. And that's how black could have equalized right there, because, or taken advantage of my e4 push and gotten to an equal position. Let's see. So he went rook d7 here. Went ahead and grabbed the pawn. Came back with the check, and I blocked, of course. And this is all pretty normal stuff here. He's just attacking stuff, and I'm defending it. Up to this point, right here, his last move was a mistake. And there's a tactic that white has that would win the game immediately. So put on your tactics hat and see if you can find the best move for white. Okay, I'm giving the answer away now. So pause the video if you want time to think about it. The best move is b4 check. His king can't take the pawn. It's still defended by the rook. And it can't go to any of these squares, so it has to drop back, and then I can take his rook. So that just wins the rook, and with it the game would be over very quickly. Instead, I noticed, well, he's attacking this pawn, and I just defended it. You know, even as a defensive move, b3 is not that great, because you know, even if there weren't this tactic, the move b4 would still be better, because his king can't take the pawn, and then I could push the c pawn forward. But anyway. That's what I played, b3. He went rook d1 here, got his rook out of trouble. I went rook d2, offering the trade because I have a winning king and pawn endgame. And, you know, I am still a pawn up, so this is still an advantage to black, although it's, you know, would have been a lot quicker. And even here, although he's getting his pawn back, I have the opportunity here. There's two ways to take this pawn. Something you might want to think about which is best. The chess engine likes this move, taking with the pawn, and it makes a lot of sense now that it's pointed out. I mean, I'm losing this pawn anyway, so it's not like I'm going to have a pair of pawns here to work with on the king side. And this pawn over here is passed. It's a passed pawn, and it's got a straight run towards the 8th rank. So that's the way to keep my advantage. So when I take with the king here, and he takes, this game is actually back to even. So all of my hard work is gone because I missed that one winning opportunity over here, and then I didn't play precisely over here. Now these rook and pawn endgames can be very tricky. Anyway, I pushed on with g4. I was still thinking I could go after this pawn with my king and get a passer over here, and at least that would keep his rook tied down. Let's see, he threw in the check, and well, I realized I needed to drop back if I wanted to stay near the pawns here. I couldn't come in this direction, that's all covered, and didn't want to go over in this direction. leave these pawns by themselves. So we went rook f6 here, and actually rook f6 is the move that lets me back in the game. So he could get a drawing position like this. So rook to a2, hitting my pawn, and then king to b4, attacking the b pawn. And actually, I'm in a little bit of trouble. I have to play precisely here. It's important to have an active rook, and come here attacking a pawn. And I can take here, and he's going to win this pawn. It's just going to turn into one of those endgames where both sides are mopping up pawns as fast as they can, and then it will turn into a draw. Well, the reason I said it's a bit white has to be careful is because the move I was thinking of was king here to get closer to this pawn and try and create a passer over here. But it just doesn't work. He's got this rook check, and once again, I can't go forward. And then when I drop back, he can bring his rook here, and he's going to pick up the b pawn, and actually the advantage has switched at this point, and black has the advantage and may go on to win. So it just shows it shows the importance of having an active rook, and also shows how you have to be careful. So anyway, this is also black's move, shows the importance of an active rook. Instead of attacking something with his rook, he dropped back to defend, and at this point I'm actually better. So rook d7, attacking his pawns. Let's see, he played king b6 to defend him. Played b4. I'm trying to restrict his kings, the squares that the kings has. Let's see, he went rook g6, trying to set up this pin here so I can push his pawn forward. So I step aside to avoid that. He goes rook to e6, and I push on with c5. His king wants to stay in touch with the b pawn, so it goes over here. And then I go forward with king h5. And now this is the kind of the final mistake of the game, I guess. He could have played b6 here, and while white is better, I'm probably still going to win this pawn. He has some counterplay over on this side of the board, and his king is playing a role in the game. The move he played, b5, his king actually has no moves. It has no legal move at this point, so his king is shut out of the game at that point. And so I effectively have an extra piece. I've got an active king, and we both have active rooks, but I'm effectively a piece up, and it's fairly straightforward to win from this point. I just bring my rook over here to take the pawn. He can't save it. Let's see, he played rook f6. He can come down here and counterattack my pawns. And maybe he should have done that immediately, but I'm going to get here quicker. So anyway, I take the h-pawn. He keeps the rooks on, which is the correct decision. I step forward with my king, comes over here to defend. And let's see, could I have grabbed another pawn there? Yeah, that pawn was hanging, but that would have let his king out of jail there. So maybe it's still better to play the way I did. Rook to c7 over here to defend, and I went rook h7. And here he should probably, definitely, he should drop back and just try and hold on to things. But I would push this pawn forward, and I'm going to win. So I don't think there's really any stopping it at this point. But instead he played rook b7. That may have even been a mouse slip, because as soon as I took that, he resigned. It's a clearly, easily winning king and pawn endgame. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Bye.